What's the creepiest or scariest thing you've ever experienced in your life? This happened relatively recently. I had a dream that my roommate's friend was over our place and we were sitting on the couch when there was a knock on the door. He then said something along the lines of, "You should have left," and he grabbed a hold of me when someone else broke down the door and began stabbing the fuck out of me. I woke up instantly, and maybe 20 minutes later, I woke up around 8 a.m. I get a knock on the door by this person I had in the dream. He asked if he could come in and wait for my roommate to come back. He was coming back that morning from visiting family, as he wanted to say hello and give him a bit of a surprise. I was still freaked out over the dream and told him that I had to go do some errands but would be gone till the afternoon. He pushed really hard for me to stay, but ultimately relented. I come back maybe an hour later and I find him and some other dude rummaging through our shit. They broke in via the back window. The other dude was holding a knife. Called the cops and all that. Spoke to my roommate and later found out his friend became a drug addict and owed some bad people money. Not really sure why he wanted me stay. After all, you'd think he'd have wanted me gone, but after seeing the knife the guy was holding, it made me real glad that I didn't stick around to find out. The dream makes this so unbelievably creepy. Wow. What made the nightmare really freaky for me was that it felt so real. I never have dreams in a real place. By that I mean somewhere that exists in real life. It's usually something made up that during the dream I think is my home, for example, and combine that with the fact that I did feel like I was being held onto while someone stabbed me really unnerved me. Obviously when I saw the guy it made me 10 times as unnerved. I'm not really a superstitious person, so I don't think this was a premonition or anything. I feel like I subconsciously picked up something off about this dude, and this was my brain's way of making my conscious self aware of it and to act accordingly. Just after college, my roommate and I lived in a townhouse. Our neighbor was murdered and I was home when the police think it happened. I was even called as a witness to what they believed was a struggle and a silenced gunshot. We didn't realize what happened until his sister and some of his friends broke into his house the next day and saw him laying on the ground with a bullet wound in his neck. The police showed up, roped off his house and the two surrounding, ours and the other neighbors. His dad showed up, and his expression when he saw his only son murdered and the scream that he let out were the most terrifying expression of grief I've ever seen and hope to ever see. Did they find out who killed him? Yeah, turns out it was a man involved with his ex-wife. This happened just this past weekend. Came home to find my brother blacked out, and when he came to he could barely stand, walk, was in an altered mental state, talking like he was drunk. He hadn't eaten or drank anything but water in 3 days and had been sleeping pretty much around the clock. Turns out he's diabetic now and was experiencing diabetic ketoacidosis. Spent the weekend in the ICU. He blacked out because he was so dehydrated that his heart couldn't properly pump blood and his blood pressure was bottoming out while his heart rate was skyrocketing. His blood glucose was sky high. He's doing better now, thankfully. But I thought I was watching my big brother, my best friend, die right in front of me at the time. When I was maybe 6 or 7, I was staying the night at my grandparents' house. I was on the couch trying to sleep when I heard whispering. They had a painting of my aunt hanging on the wall in the living room and it was talking to me. Nothing creepy though, it was talking the way my aunt would talk to me, asking me if I was behaving in typical aunt talk. She tells me to wake my grandfather up because she needs to talk to him. I did, and when he realized she wasn't there he began scolding me. In between threats and insults he noticed someone moving outside the window. He grabbed his pistol and told me to stay in the room with my grandmother. A minute or two later we hear a gunshot. Turns out there is a prison for young adults about 20 miles from where they live. 3 of them killed a guard and escaped. They were sizing the house up to take his truck and whatever they could, but he saw them first. Ended up shooting one of them in the shoulder. I have no idea why that fucking picture was talking to me. They've never experienced ghosts before or since. Holy shit, was your aunt alive at the time of the incident? That's the crazy thing. Yeah, she was, and she still is. I was in the break room eating lunch at my first job out of college. The break room had windows that had a perfect view of the interstate, and I would mindlessly watch the interstate traffic every day on my lunch. One time I watched a semi-truck smash into one of the concrete pillars for the overpass. As I was calling 911 I saw a gentleman in the opposite bound lane pull over to the shoulder, get out of his car and sprint to the semi-truck. I saw the trucker hand his dog to the Samaritan and then climb out shortly after, and as soon as they got out of the truck, the vehicle exploded. Seriously, the most nerve-wracking thing I've ever seen. Lived in an apartment complex when I was 7. Apartments in both sides, and an alley down the middle. The cars drive down and parked in the carport underneath. It was dark and I was walking from the sidewalk down the alley and I heard a voice from behind a dumpster say, "I'm going to kill you." I let out a blood-curdling scream and ran home. I'm 55 now and still think about it occasionally. Standing on the front stoop of my apartment at 2 a.m. smoking a cigarette. Dead fucking silence the entire time I was standing there. All at once a train horn blows, the little 5-year-old girl next door screams and a wind gust comes out of nowhere slamming the open door against my shoulder. I swear to God for exactly 1 second I thought I was being attacked by a ghost. My heart was pounding and I thought I was gonna cry. That shit probably took 2 years off of my life. For the record, little girl screamed probably cause her and her mama always stayed up late and were probably playing. Okay, so when I was a surgical resident I went to assist in what's euphemistically called a harvest. A 9-year-old kid had been hit by a car and been pronounced brain dead. His family wanted his organs to go to good use, so we went there to collect the organs. He came in on a ventilator, but with his heart beating and alive appearing. We opened him up end to end, got ready to clamp off all the major organs, poured in ice, and then took them all out. I met a guy who got his kidney and another who got his liver. The liver guy would certainly be dead without it, and the kidney guy probably. His other kidney, and heart, and some of his gut all went to good uses. As much as I knew he was already dead, it was still really difficult to come to terms with. Definitely the most creepiest thing. I work in family medicine now. I was 7. My 2 sisters and I were home alone at our new house that wasn't finished. No phone or nothing installed yet. Mom was in the city a few hours away and wouldn't be home until late. The house is out in the country with a 1/4-mile gravel drive. Closest neighbors are just under 2 miles away. We were playing Uno or some shit when our dog started barking all crazy like. My sister, who was 11 or 12, went outside and there was an old ass creepy pale green van driving down our driveway and they stopped halfway down and one person got out and approached the dog. It was a nice dog and not really scary or aggressive at all and went up to the dude and he got our dog to get in the van and then they kept driving towards the house so my sister came in and locked all the doors and started freaking out. After about 5 minutes of hearing our dog's muffled barks we started hearing a bunch of banging on the doors like people were trying to get in so we went downstairs to let them see people were there. It was 3 dudes dressed in all black wearing ski masks. One of them was a little person. They just stopped and waved at us. Then tried even harder to bust in the doors and break the windows and shit. Our windows were these thick ass double pane semi-plexiglass things that are apparently impossible to break, but we went upstairs and his in the attic fucking armed with a hammer and some screwdrivers and they continued for like an hour banging on shit and screaming that they were gonna get in and we should just let them so they wouldn't have to hurt us when they did. Fucking terrifying. Anyway, after that hour we heard them drive off and waited like 20 minutes then my sister went and let our dog in and brought her to the attic. Like 2 hours later someone came to the door and rang the doorbell for like 15 minutes straight knocking and ringing the doorbell. We never checked but I'm assuming it was the same people. Fucking still periodically have nightmares about that shit and it was 20 years ago. Sorry for the horrendous writing skills/style. I suck at storytelling and grammar and all things communication. I'm glad they didn't take or do anything to your dog. Hallucinating and developing strong paranoid after smoking spice, or K2, which I've only done once several years ago. For anyone reading, never touch synthetic weed. I had a friend use K2 once in college. He smokes weed quite regularly and uses other drugs as well, but he said he'd never touch K2 again. He was playing Dark Souls on his computer and said when the "you died" message came up he had a mental breakdown. It can warp your reality in horrifying ways. For me, I kept seeing shadowy figures in the windows of houses, which led me to getting incredibly hostile and in full defense mode, fearing that someone would attack me. That was the first, and last time that I will ever use that wretched substance again. I was about 2 or 3 when I watched my dad punch my mother in the nose. He was abusive and that was the last straw for my mother. We were living in an apartment building and fortunately, my grandma lived in the next apartment. So my 3-year-old self had to run out of my apartment, past the elevator, and knock on my grandma's door and she ended up getting my mom out of there. I haven't seen him since and she's been with her current boyfriend for over 10 years. I hope this isn't prying, but I've always wondered, are you afraid that he'll ever come back for you? No, not at all. He loved me and my brother a lot. Even if he did, he wouldn't hurt us. Even my mom can agree that he would never hurt us. He loved me and my brother. I know that my dad's mom tried to get legal custody of us and said my mom kidnapped us. That never happened. I'm always told by my grandmother that once I turn 18 I'll want to go see him. I always deny it, because who would want to see the person who hurt your mother? I know he wants to see us too, but he's not willing to pay the 14 years of child support, so he's waiting until we're an adult to see us. I also found out he was in jail for a few months for drugs or something like that. So long story short, I'm not afraid of him ever trying to come to me. I know he plans to when I'm older. Even though I'm not afraid, I don't plan to meet him or get to know him because I've already spent just about my entire life without him. And if we did meet for some reason, I know he wouldn't hurt me. Having a black bear come up to the car I was in when I was 11 because he could smell my aunt's dog and wanted lunch. Stuck his head in the open moon roof and everything. Was terrifying. Holy hell, what did you do? He eventually just wandered off and I grabbed my aunt's dog and booked it for the house. Needless to say, I had to piss at that point out of fear. I had this dream that my brother killed someone and hid the body in our pool. It was in the winter and the tarp was on, so he was able to hide the body for some time. Eventually spring came and he was trying to get the body out to hide it, but it was so waterlogged that it was falling apart in his hands. The freaky thing is how real it felt and the amount of detail. It felt like I was actually living this in real life. I could remember news reports about the missing person, how I found out that he killed the man, my mom begging me not to report him to the police, the rotting flesh melting off the face of the dead person as he took it out of the pool, the police sirens, and it ended with me being so traumatized of what I saw I was placed in a mental health ward. I woke up crying and it took hours for me to calm down and start my day. It took a day or two to finally understand and process it was a dream. It took months for me not to be scared of my brother. My brother is super chill and the person in the dream was the complete opposite of him in real life. It's weird to explain, but I felt that I had to learn how to trust him again. It's been years since that dream, but it was so real and lucid. I've never had such a lucid dream since, and I really hope I don't. My childhood home was straight up haunted. My sister frequently complained about faces in the lights. My brother, maybe 5 at the time, came running in the house crying because the man hanging in the garage scared him. There was nobody there. I once woke up to a dark figure standing over my bed. I slept on the floor of my parents' room for days after that. There was an honest-to-God cave in the basement. Dirt walls, went back maybe 15 feet. I never went in there, so I can't say what was in it. Electronic devices would sometimes turn on by themselves. Our dog would stare at one corner in one room and growl. Eventually we ended up buying our neighbor's house, right across the street. One night, after the neighbors had moved out but we hadn't yet moved in. My whole family was asleep, it was the middle of the night. Suddenly the fire alarms start going off, we all wake up and my dad checks the house. Everything is fine. He takes the batteries out of the alarms and we all go back to bed. An hour or so later, we wake up to alarms again. This time it's the carbon monoxide detectors and the no battery fire alarms. My dad turns off the alarms, we grab blankets and sleeping bags, and we leave. That night we sleep in a big family huddle in the living room of our new house. My parents called someone to check the carbon monoxide at the house, and they report back that everything was normal. The next day we started moving and never slept in that house again. I've never experienced anything paranormal since then. I had an ex-fiancé that was Mr. Perfect until about 18 months in. He started exhibiting strange behavior, became controlling, tried to keep food from me, and one night I was so frustrated and just said, "I'm leaving to do something tonight." I looked at him and I swear he was like a different person. His eyes were different and there was a cold, callous air about him. I swear the atmosphere in the room changed. I immediately jumped in the air, started bawling and left within 5 minutes. The biggest mindfuck and creepiest thing ever is figuring out someone you love is actually a psychopath that was pretending to be someone else until they think you won't leave or have control of you. I was with a person for 18 months that didn't exist and had nightmares for 2 years seeing that face over and over. That was his true face. I got in a fairly bad car accident last year. I was driving with my brother and we hit a tree going 75 miles per hour. Directly after impact, I sustained no head trauma, so I was conscious for the whole thing. However, my brother received a really nasty concussion which had him knocked out for upwards of 7 minutes. I just remember with very vivid clarity looking over at my brother and seeing him bloodied and slumped forward in his seat after the airbag deflated, and I poked him and called his name and he didn't respond, and I thought for hours, we rode in different ambulances, that I had killed my brother. Edit, for anyone interested. Back in the 1980s, growing up in suburban Chicago, my brother, some friends and I got into using the Ouija board. Of course, when our mom found out, she quickly condemned it. Like that was going to stop us. One afternoon we were in my bedroom on the second floor with brother and a few friends with the lights low messing with our homemade Ouija board. We were pretty young and getting ourselves pretty amped up about the spirit world when all of a sudden there was something or someone slamming on the bedroom window. Mind you, we were on the second floor, so this couldn't just be some random person walking by. We all turned to look and there it was, a scary face staring at us through the window. With no time to focus on its face, it took all of about a second for us to jump up and run downstairs. When we get down there, the front door opens up and there it is, inside our house. A few seconds later it's pulling a stocking off its head. Guess who it is? Mom. She knew what we were up to, went to the garage, got a ladder, put the stocking on her head, beat on our window and took about 10 years off all of our lives. She was laughing hysterically. Good one, Mom. Alright, I'm freaking out just talking about it, but here goes. I was 12, hanging out with the next door neighbor's kid, EJ, also 12 years old. His parents went to a movie, so it's just us playing Sega upstairs. After a round of the game we were playing, he stands up and walks down the hall to his parents' bedroom. I'm chilling and I hear him all excited. Dude, check this out. I walk down the hall. He's sitting on his parents' bed, the whole room is dark minus a lamp he had turned on. He's holding his dad's .38. He looks up at me, smiles the creepiest fucking grin and says, "It was really nice knowing you," and puts a bullet through his mouth. I noped the hell out. I didn't eat for a week, I couldn't sleep. But, I also was physically unable to talk. Literally, I was unable to open my mouth. And there was a voice screaming at me the whole time, "If you tell, you die." A week later, I woke up and was suddenly able to talk again, and I told my parents what happened. Of course, mortified, they called the family. They were in Spain, for the past month. And EJ was perfectly fine. I saw psychiatrists for years, and I still wasn't able to find a valid answer to that. One psych said it was probably a bad dream. Yet I still have identical trauma to someone who's seen death at a young age. Holy shit, that's insane. Have you ever gotten an explanation that seemed plausible to you? Or have psychologists been uniformly baffled? Why didn't your parents seem at all perturbed that you weren't eating or sleeping? Real or not, I'm sorry you experienced that. Thank you. That means a lot. A full psychotic breakdown as a child would explain 90% plus of what happened. I already had a number of really traumatic experiences, so this could have been my mind snapping. With my kid brain going nuts, it could have merged a lot of stuff together and then organized in a way that would make sense. This makes perfect sense since I have genetic depression and a dissociation disorder. Because of that I was already quieter and eating less. So my parents were definitely worried, but didn't know it was because of that. On top of that, I had witnessed death on 2 occasions as a kid. It was a unanimous agreement among the psychs I went to that death is very hard to process and accept as a child. One of those deaths was quite violent and I may not have been able to understand it. Thus the possible merger of timelines. But the only part that's confusing is the gun being outside of that safe. My friend's dad was meticulous about his firearms and had the logs to prove that the gun was locked away in the safe upon their departure and the safe was never opened during the entirety of their trip. My other guess, which is far-fetched, but some sort of haunting. I have no evidence for this, thus only a far-fetched theory. Either way, I've worked on letting it bother me less and less over the years. I'm significantly more stable and have had no diagnosis or concerns about schizophrenia. I can't let it haunt me for the rest of my life, so I've worked on moving forward. But, in return, I have used it to help other people with schizo, depression, or dissociation disorders. A lot of the time, the crazy people that normal people see, are simply normal people in anguish and without answers.